Oh, it is a Thursday affair here on Birds 365. You got both of the Mac guys in the house today. I am Jody McDonald. He is my partner, John McMullen. Oh, you look like you're sprouting up there, John. You look like you're growing before our very eyes.
We all got to contribute, Jody. Are you fertilizing or are you watering?
I got no bloody idea what I'm doing, and I unfortunately am starting to doubt that the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles has an idea what he's doing either. When last we spoke, you were on with us yesterday, heading over for COVID testing. You're looking spry and chipper, so I'm assuming that you passed and you're in good health. And then you got to get I don't want to call it a lecture, but an analogy from the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles that just kept me staring at the TV saying, did he really go there? Is that the message that the head coach of the 2-5 Philadelphia Eagles wants to put forward? That they are a little flower that is growing here in the city of brotherly love?
He didn't say little flowers.
Well, no, true.
He didn't emphasize the size of the flower. I assume it's a big, powerful flower. Obviously, look, I knew when he said it wasn't going to go over well. But even I was shocked about how people jumped on this, how quickly on social media. It doesn't matter. At the end, we went over this with his first press conference. I mean, the issues remain the issues. The issues remain, what the heck are you doing on the offensive side of the football? His messaging, I don't give a you-know-what. I think it's ironic if you look at this week. We were talking before the show a tiny bit. You got biting kneecaps against growing flowers. I know which I know 100% which Philadelphia would prefer. Although one guy's 2-5, the other guy's 0-7.
Right.
So technically, I mean, it doesn't matter. You can scream biting kneecaps, blah blah blah. You can go 0-7. Is my point. I don't know why people fixate on press conferences so much and alleviate the bigger problems, which are what the hell is going on the football field.
John, you are right, but you are wrong, and I will explain
usually.
For you. Here's the way I look at it slightly differently than you. Your overall point of what he says doesn't really matter much is accurate. If the Philadelphia Eagles were 5-2 instead of 2-5, people would just roll their eyes and move on if he went through I love the growth pattern of our little flower here in Philadelphia. It wouldn't matter. You're right. Because they're 2-5, more emphasis is put on it. You are correct in that assumption. But here's the difference between this and his opening press conference. When he did what he did when he was first introduced as the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, he had never done it before. He had never sat in that big chair. He had never had that narrow-focused, bearing down on you spotlight that you're going to get as the head coach of a pro football team. So I cut him a whole bunch of slack. Everybody else was, oh, my God, he doesn't have the answer for this. What do you mean he hasn't looked at tape? Could he even spit it out? Yes, people overanalyzed the first ever meeting with the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I said, much like you just said, when they start winning and losing games, then we can judge this guy. What he does in his first press conference will be long gone and long forgotten when we actually start to see the Eagles play some football games. Well, they've now played 7 football games, and he's done that many media opportunities, and he's fielded questions from you guys, and he's felt the pressure of being the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's making flower references? Really? Did he not learn since that opening press conference? No, I'm not going to compare yesterday with what happened when he was hired.
All right, I get the not learning aspect of it, and I somewhat agree on, you're only making things more difficult for yourself when you do things like that. Although I heard maybe he's playing 3D chess. Maybe he's going to use this to fire up his team. Look, they're laughing at us. I don't think that's the case. I do look at it from the perspective of, and I said this on Twitter, and one of the things the difference between the introductory press conference and yesterday. The problem with the introductory press, he was nervous.
Right.
Now, go to my Twitter feed. It's up there at JF McMullen. You can see the whole portion of the Plower conversation. He wasn't nervous. He was very comfortable and explaining his analogy. So that's where I think, he's calmed down, he's settled down, he's more comfortable in his own skin. I think that's actually a vast improvement from the introductory press conference. Not nervous at all, not reaching. This is the message he wanted to send. So that's number one. We kind of differ a little bit on that. Number two is, what the hell do you want as part of the fan base? I'm not talking to you, Jody. I'm talking to fans.
Well, no, you can talk to me. I'm part of the fan base.
You hate Andy Reid.
You can include me in that
all
group.
Right.
I have no problem with that.
I'll include you. You hate Andy Reid. I got to do a better job. You ought to hate Shane Steichen, who's torturous when he's up there with his stupid coach speak that gives you absolutely nothing. The last thing I want this guy to do is, because, all right, these people are being, whats. I'm going to just go back in a shell. I'm not going to give you anything. Look, he's got to be himself. He's being himself. I don't have any problem with it. I have a problem with 2 and 5. I have a problem with the offense looking like it doesn't have an identity. I don't have a problem. And guess what? Jordan Mailata came out. Jason Kelsey came out. Dallas Goedert came out. And they all said essentially, the message was great. We got it. We loved it. Maybe it is a different generation. In 1975, yeah, you probably said talk about flowers. And, if Andrew Sandeo was here, the nastiest human being I ever met in my life, with his Make Football Violent Again hat, yeah, maybe punch him in the face. I don't know. But if Fletcher Cox, I think a lot of people are taking Fletcher Cox, and I think these two things are not mutually exclusive, in that Fletcher's unhappy because of how he's being played in the defensive scheme. And they're taking that and conflating that with everyone is unhappy. As I said, Jordan Mailata was raving about it. Dallas Goedert was raving about it. Jason Kelsey, even as a more veteran player, said everything's fine. One guy unhappy doesn't equal 69 guys unhappy. In fact, if you have 69 guys together and one of them isn't unhappy, you're the first. You're the first who got that done.
I agree, and I get the point you're trying to make. And I will give Nick Sirianni this. Other than Fletcher this past Sunday, talking about I don't play screens, it was really the first time that any Eagle player had, in almost any way, shape, or form, questioned what the coaching staff is doing. And that's pretty good considering they were only 2 and 4 before the beatdown this weekend against the Raiders. So just generally keeping the team together through their first 7 games, he's done a nice job. I'm not trying to bury Nick Sirianni on where this team is at 2 and 5. As a matter of fact, again, very individual and personal acknowledgement. I had them 2 and 5 when the season, before the season started. Wins, losses, piece of paper, get it out. What do you see? 2 and 5. Yeah. So how can I sit here and go, no, oh my God, I can't believe the Eagles are 2 and 5. No, I thought they'd be 2 and 5. So
a lot of people did.
Yeah.
After this week. And then the easier portion starts on Sunday in Detroit. Look, if they lose this game, all bets are off against an 0-7 team. And by the way, they have a chance to lose this game. We talked about the Lions a little bit, and the fact that, and we're going to have Dave Birkett on in a little while from the Detroit Free Press. They've been in a lot of these games. They've been in more games. They've had an opportunity to win more games than the Eagles have, believe it or not. They haven't been able to do it. And, at the end of the day, there are no moral victories in the NFL. The Lions, if there were, the Lions would be leading the league. But it is what it is. What I'm trying to say is, you see 0-7, you assume a team that has stopped biting. Well, Dan Campbell's still got him biting some kneecaps. But look, it's going to get ugly because nobody's going to add that context into it if the Eagles can't beat this team.
And it's going to be ugly for me because I don't buy that context. I know a lot of people buy into it. Oh, they're there every week. Oh, they're right there in the fourth quarter. Oh, they've had a chance to win. Oh, they've been beat by late field goals, but they lose. And when you're 0-7, you lose every week. You have not figured out a way to win. And despite the fact that, much like, maybe even better so than here in Philadelphia, that the Eagles are struggling, yet you're seeing no fissures in the clubhouse, and the guys are all still following the coach's message, and they're fighting all the way through the 60 minutes. You're right. The Lions may be even better than that, and I think the Eagles are pretty good at it. But they lose. They always lose. They find a way to lose. And I think that can set in as part of the team, too. Uh-oh. What's going to happen? You get to the fourth quarter.
Oh, yeah. The other shoe.
What's going to happen? What are we going to do wrong?
Yeah.
What's the other team going to do right?
Yeah.
How is this week's misery going to play itself out? That's what I'm looking for on Sunday between the Eagles and the Lions.
No, I hear you. I mean, the bottom line is you got to figure out a way to win, and winning is it's a skill set. You got to almost learn how to win in the NFL, learn how to finish these games. And they haven't done it. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I do look at their games. There are probably two of their games they weren't in, Cincinnati and Green Bay early. Even Green Bay, I think they stuck in for a while, but I'm not quite sure. Everything else that was a wild game against San Francisco. They should have beat Baltimore. We know Tucker. And some people say that should have been a delay of game on top of a 66-yard field goal. They were against the Bears till late. They should have beat the Vikings. They got the 2-point conversion at the end of the game, and they gave up I think it was a 56-yard field goal. And then they played really well against the Rams, who I think are the best team in the NFC, even though they're in second place, at least through this portion of the schedule. But you're right. I mean, if you don't win football games, and we got to talk to Dan Campbell yesterday in a conference call, and he is an old school guy. And he's like, well, I asked him about that. I said, if you could put your finger on one thing, why you haven't been able to finish one of these games, he said, consistency. There's no excuses. You got to make the play at the end of the game and all that stuff. Kind of coach speak, But and hey, we go back to the original conversation. Is that what you want, coach speak, or do you want hell and brimstone? What you really want is somebody to win. And I don't know if either of these coaches are equipped to win in this league, but it has nothing to do with press conferences or the way they message what they want to get accomplished.
One of the things that I'm looking at in the matchup between these two teams, they're both bad. They're not good football teams, 2-5 and 0-7. I'm not giving you any great revelation here by saying both teams are pretty putrid. Over the course of the 7 games, the Eagles are minus 26. And they've had a couple of games where they were trailing by more points than the final score actually ended up being. Again, how much stock do you put into, oh, by the way, AKA garbage time points and stats and the like? I think you have to look at it in its proper context. But final scores are final scores. The Eagles are minus 26. That's not good. The Lions, despite the fact that people say they're in it every single week, they hang tough, they're just not getting the job done, they're minus 72. That's awful. It's much worse than minus 26.
But you just brought up the context of that. Like, yeah, I mean, they got blown out by Cincinnati. I know that. They didn't play well. I forget the other game. There were 2 games, really. I just said it, too. But anyway, you're right about, and let's use the Raiders game as a perfect indication. You go down the field, you score, you're up 7-0, then you give up 30 unanswered. The game's stinking over, Jody. It's over. It's over. The Raiders lose the sense of urgency. They're just trying to get to the finish line. They're playing prevent defense. They're trying not to get anybody hurt. They're trying to get to the next week. They're trying to get out of it. They take the foot off the gas pedal, and the final score doesn't look that bad. Doesn't look that bad. It was bad. They were blown out of that football game. They were blown out in Dallas. They were blown out by Tampa. And Bruce Arians made some bad decisions and gave his and took his foot off the gas. And they end up, that ended up being a one-score game. You really think that Tampa game was a one-score game? They weren't in that game even for a little bit until Bruce Arians made a few mistakes. That's the kind of context I'm talking about. So if you don't value that context, yeah, it doesn't look that bad. They were not in the Tampa game. They were not in the Las Vegas game. They weren't. That's like a moral victory to
Understood,
me. If you're saying they were
I use that context more for evaluating individual players and the stats that they put up. Jalen Hurts has a lot of, oh, by the way, stats when the other defense is in almost like regular Philadelphia defensive mode. We'll give you a whole bunch of yards. You want to take a whole bunch of yards? Go ahead and take it. Just take your time doing it. We won't stop you from going in the end zone because we're already up by 2 touchdowns plus. Go ahead, take the points, Eagles. Jonathan Gannon does that whether the Eagles are winning or losing on the defensive side.
That to me is a fair criticism. I mean, you're going to play that type of defense against Tom Brady. He's going to take what you're giving him. Derek Carr is, not Tom Brady, but he's smart enough to take what's given him. And, until you get to a quarterback, and by the way, that's what makes me, you can criticize Jared Goff all you want, and I'll be in your corner. He's the type of quarterback who, to me, if you're going to play that way against Jared Goff, he's really accurate. He'll take what you give him. And he's liable to bite you. You got to get sort of those Sam Darnold type quarterbacks, young quarterbacks who are still learning, shell-shocked from his time in New York, doesn't have a lot of confidence. Those guys have trouble with cover two. The veteran guys who've done it and seen it and been in Super Bowls, and people forget Jared Goff was in the Super Bowl, they're not going to be rattled by 2 safeties sitting back in Flint, Michigan. That's how far they are off the line of scrimmage.
Here's the reason why I think the Eagles defense could actually be okay. I'm going to take Jonathan Gannon at his word that they're going to challenge more this week, that he has acknowledged that they aren't playing aggressive enough defense. They're playing bend but don't break until we break defense, that this week he's going to be a little bit more aggressive and give his defensive backs orders to play a little bit close, to get out of Flint, to get up into, what was this? Grosse Pointe Woods. That's where my father lived when he worked for the Tigers. Get up to get a little closer to Motown up there with your defensive backs. And, oh, by the way, the Lions don't have weapons that scare me. That's why you can get it. If you're trying to protect against the big play, who's going to make the big play? TJ Hawkinson for a 50-yard gain? Their tight end is their best receiver. So JG, please, I hope you're listening. Take some chances this week. Be a little bit more aggressive. Take it away from the Detroit Lions. I don't think you're going to have to play the price. Now, I love Swift, their running back, Philly kid. Talked about him when he was in high school here in town, that he was going to become an NFL back. Went to Georgia, had good seasons there, and now, sure enough, he's the man in Detroit. Yeah, he scares me a little bit. But again, that a 50-yarder, you're going to break it off either on a run or a swing pass. I'm not worried about that. I believe the Eagles will play more aggressive defense and not worry about giving up the big play because the Lions just don't have big play guys.
Yeah, you're right with that. I mean, this is the first game all year where you can go into it and say, hey, you know what? The Eagles have better receivers. It might be the only game all year where you go into the game and say, you know what? The Eagles have better receivers. They have nothing at wide receiver. They have a rookie 4th-round pick, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Khalif Raymond. I don't even know who the heck they're throwing the football to other than TJ Hawkinson. But they do have 2 good running backs. So, yeah, this is a week. But I'm surprised to hear you say that, Jody, because I like Jonathan Gannon. Yeah. And I don't have confidence he's going to change. And you got more confidence than me.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, until I see it, I'm not going to bank on it. And but I agree you should do it. And this is a week where you can get away with doing it, certainly.
And here's the reason why. And this is not going to be very complimentary to the defense coordinator. I think Fletcher Cox put him on notice. When your star player, the guy who makes the most money, the guy who's made the most Pro Bowls, the guy who is arguably the defensive leader. I know some people say Rodney McLeod. I think more people look to Fletcher Cox on the defense than anything else for leadership. When he comes out and says, I don't play screen passes, and did it in a professional way, but kind of puts the defense coordinator on blast, I think you got to respond. I think you got to do something about it. And he decided not to challenge Fletcher. He came in and said, I know where Fletcher's coming from. It's on me. I got to do better. Okay, well, then do better. We'll see if that happens this week. Paint me as Mr. JG optimistic. I think he actually will give them the reins a little bit more to be aggressive on defense. All right, Jody Mack here with you, with John McMullen. We are the Mac guys here on Birds 365. We'll give you Detroit perspective next. Dave Birkett's been covering the Lions for the Detroit Free Press for years. He suffered through from some tough years. They're suffering even worse than we are here in Philadelphia right now. Somebody's got to win the game on Sunday. We got a Detroit perspective from Dave Birkett from the Detroit Free Press next here on Birds 365.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
7 on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Appreciate you jumping aboard Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald with you. Don't know if they'll call it must-see TV across the nation, but it is here in both Detroit and Philadelphia. The Lion-Eagle Showdown, here to give us a Detroit perspective. He's been covering the Lions for over a decade for the Free Press. did it in the state of Michigan previous to that. So he's been a Lions guy for quite some time. Hall of Fame voter Dave Birkett joins us here on Birds 365. How are you, Dave?
Seen a lot of bad football in my days. How are you guys? Everything good?
Yeah. How you doing, Dave? It's interesting. You know, I'm thrilled to have another Hall of Fame voter. We have Domino on here. Who else we have? Clark Judge.
Gary Myers has been on.
Gary Myers. Yeah, we got all you guys. So thrilled to have you join the program as well. But before we get into some Hall of Fame talk, we got to talk about what's going on this week in Detroit. And that's two bad football teams matching up. But you know, I got a chance to get on Dan Campbell's conference call yesterday. So, one, I give him credit because, you know, coaches don't have to do that these days. By the way, did you guys get Nick Sirianni? Is he doing those things?
Yeah, I didn't do it yesterday. One of my colleagues did, but great for Nick to do it as well.
Yeah. So I give those guys credit when they do it. But we've been talking about moral victories. The Lions have been in a lot of games. Should have beat Minnesota. Maybe should have beat Baltimore with Justin Tucker. What if you can put your finger on one thing, why can't they finish a game?
Talent. I mean, I think that's the bottom line of it, is just that they aren't talented enough right now. I mean, they have a very young roster, very thin roster. They were the, beginning of the season when they sort of do the roster analysis, I think they were second youngest in the NFL. That's been a big part of their struggles. The secondary has let them down. They have no deep threats in the passing game. I mean, they are playing hard. You're right. I think people have responded to Dan Campbell. I think he and his staff, made up of a couple of former Eagles assistants too, are doing a pretty good job. Yeah. But they're just from a purely talent perspective, they are, near the bottom of the NFL right now. And that's why when they play some of these good teams, they can put a half together. They can play a really strong quarter, but they can't do it for 60 minutes.
Dave, we were just talking about it before you came on, the fact that up until after the Raiders game, when Fletcher Cox kind of got a little perturbed and noted, I don't play screens, and he's not 100% happy with how he's being used in defense coordinator Jonathan Gannon's scheme. The team had stuck behind the coaching staff, and they were still believers, and they did go out and play hard. Not as well. Their roster is not good enough either, much like the Lions, maybe slightly better, but not good enough. But they have stayed with their coach's message. Campbell has done the same. Is this the breaking point for one of these two teams, that whoever comes out on the short end of this score, you're going to start to hear questions about the coach's message and what they're actually doing with their teams, the two newbies on the sidelines for both of these squads?
Yeah, I don't know. Someone had asked me yesterday if they, if Dan's under the hot seat at all, or what would it take? And I don't see him as being on the hot seat at all. And I don't think this is any sort of breaking point for the Lions. I mean, look, everyone wants a win, and they, badly need a win. And eventually they're going to need a few of them, I think, to make sure that Dan's message, hits home and people outside of the organization start believing. But everyone sort of knew, what this season was from the Lions perspective. You trade away, your quarterback, you're adding draft picks, you're building for the future. You look at the roster. Again, it didn't, take a rocket scientist to sort of see where the Lions were at. So disappointing that they're here. And, they had their own little blip against the Bengals when they just didn't play well, and I thought didn't play hard. But, to me, at least from, appearances where I sit, these guys, the organization still appears to be bought firmly into Dan Campbell and his message.
Dave, you bring up that Bengals game. What was interesting to me, and you had talked about the receivers as well, this is the first time all season, maybe the only time all season, I'll go into a game and say, the Eagles probably have better receivers. Not probably, they do. And that we never get to say that here. So I was a little bit interested in Dan kind of called out Jared Goff after that Cincinnati game. Whatever he said, needs to step it up more. I'm paraphrasing, but you probably know the exact quote. What was behind that, especially when doesn't have a lot of people to throw to?
Yeah, well, and he did look. Part of that answer was, he said, he was talking about different changes he was making, and he was going to consider everything. And I think the question was, what about Jared? What about your quarterback? And he said, no, Jared's our guy, right? Like, he's our quarterback, but we need more out of him. And so I think there's a little more context there than maybe people realize. And he was 100% right. And look, Dan is, I think part of the reason why people have responded so well to him is that everything he says and does publicly, that's who he is behind closed doors with the guys, right? When he's calling Jared Goff out in the media, it's not the first time he's done that. He does it in the locker room before he comes and talks to us. And when he's crying on the podium and getting emotional about a last-second loss, that's what he's like in the locker room. When he's angry, after the Bengals game, that's what he's like in the locker room. So I think that, his passion and being genuine, that matters a whole lot to people. And as for Jared, look, most people, I think, and maybe the Lions were hopeful that he could be more than a caretaker. They weren't, locked into him long term. But I think most people looked at him when this trade was made and said, all right, that guy is he's a placeholder for whoever the Lions are going to draft that quarterback next year, the year after, whenever that happens. So now the Lions, they didn't think Jared Goff they thought he would be a quarterback that could keep them out of this type of situation where they go for whatever because he's a vet, but they haven't surrounded him with much talent.
Dave, you did mention a couple of ex-Eagle guys that are on Dan Campbell's staff, and we want to get to that. But first, another ex-Philadelphia guy, DeAndre Swift, who was a high school star here in town before going to Georgia, and have been actually quite surprised that he is getting the ball via the air as much as he is, because he wasn't a great pass receiver at Georgia. I remember when he came out in the draft, I thought he was unquestionably the top running back. But some people say he doesn't catch the ball coming out of the backfield. He's been real good at that. As a matter of fact, he might be their number one passing weapon. Hawkinson as well, but Swift has actually got more balls thrown his way. When did he get over that hump? What made him a better pass receiving running back this year?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, those are their two. It's not receivers. It's a tight end in Hawkinson and a running back in Swift, who are Jared Goff's two favorite targets and two most productive receivers. And look, I thought Swift was, I thought he was a good, receiving back coming out of Georgia. I mean, the Lions certainly, the old regime certainly saw him as being that multi-dimensional threat. He did have, you guys may remember, a very first game, I think it was last year, where he dropped a would-be game-winning touchdown, in the end zone. So things haven't been perfect in that regard, but the bottom line with Swift is that he is the Lions' most explosive offensive player. I mean, he's the guy that can win one-on-one, matchups in the open field. And so that's what they're trying to do. You put him on a linebacker. A lot of times that's a matchup that's in the Lions' favor. And so, that's really how the Lions have operated. And because they don't have a lot of receivers, you'll see DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams play together sometimes. I mean, two tailbacks essentially on the field at the same time, and that creates some matchup problems as well.
Dave Phipp, I got to talk to you about Dave Phipp. Our guy was here for a long time. I think he's one of the best special teams coordinators in this league. He's been that way for a long time. The Lions kind of pulled out the stops against the Rams, who's a very talented football team, understandably so, but really successful. You have the opening drive, onside kick, successfully recovered. Yeah, ironically, the Eagles tried to do that against the Raiders, were unsuccessful. Yeah, but fake punt. Is this desperation, or is this, combination of both? Dave has really got these guys humming on special teams. How has been the overall outlook there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little desperation. You play a Rams team where offensively you can't keep up, so you're doing everything you can to maximize possessions. And two fake punts that they converted and the surprise onside kick last week, they really did everything they could to get the offense, keep the offense on the field. And Dave Phipp has done a good job. I mean, Dan told the story yesterday. He said he was with Dave in Miami under Darren Rizzi. Dave was the assistant there, and he just said, assistant special teams coordinator, that is. And Dan said he sort of looked at this bright young guy and kind of knew that the energy that he had and the way that he taught things, that he would be a good coordinator. And so when he finally got the opportunity last year, he was the first guy on his list. And fortunately for the Lions, it worked out. I think the Lions have done a really good job in special teams this year. They cycled through a whole bunch of kickers in the preseason. They finally found one that has stuck. And obviously they have a really good punter. And so that certainly helps too. But Dave's done a good job scheming some of those things out.
The problem is when you make three of those plays, and they made three last week, and you don't win the game, well, now it's on tape. The element of a surprise isn't going to be there this weekend against Eagles, but we shall see. I do want to ask you about the quarterback. You gave us a little bit on Goff and his favorite receivers and what he does. He's a bridge quarterback, and everybody knows it, that the Lions are going to go in another direction at some point. We came in here in Philadelphia basically asking the same questions. Jalen Hurts going to be given a chance, but is he the guy going forward? He hasn't quite grasped the job like the brass ring, and I think Goff has done the same in Detroit. How is that playing in the town with the fan base? How do you think it's playing in the locker room?
Yeah, I think it's in the locker room. I think, people certainly like Jared. I mean, again, this is a bunch of, unheralded receivers to begin with, right? And these are guys that have fought for their NFL careers or are scrapping to hold on in some ways. So they've sort of, bonded together. And give Jared credit. I mean, he was a guy that, he led the offseason workouts multiple times. He got, receivers together out in LA where he lives, trying to get this playbook down, before they reported. So he's done some of those leadership things that, that you want to see. But I think it's clear to, I've covered this team now for years or whatever it is. And I think anyone who sort of has watched Jared Goff from the summer till now, fans included, like Matthew Stafford was a different breed of quarterback. And so even though I think the Lions were right to deal Stafford and to sort of start this whole rebuild, fresh and new, like that's the type of quarterback that you need if you're going to succeed long in the NFL. And I think fans, there's not a run Jared Goff jerseys because I do think that they realize, the lot that he's placed in. But I will say this for him and for the Lions, I think Jared is.
We lost Dave. Damn, I wanted because I wanted Dave to continue to tell you how good Matthew Stafford is, because I know you don't like Matthew Stafford. But the second part, I wanted to get with Deuce Staley also, and hopefully Dave gets back here. But and Deuce Staley also. And can we pop Dave back up? Yeah, Dave, it's hopefully we got you back.
Sorry about that, guys. Not sure what happened there.
Problem.
Yeah, no problem. It happens. Technical difficulties. But yeah, two things. I want you to tell Jody how good Matthew Stafford is, number one. But also, and this is something probably only interesting to me. But you brought up Jack Box, who's probably the best punter in the NFL. Last year in training camp, Aaron Cepas was up there against Jack Box, and he's come to Philadelphia. He's been darn good. I wanted to know, probably nobody's interested in this but me. Did you notice Aaron at all? Did you say, because obviously Jack Box is not going to lose to anybody, but did you notice him at all when he was in Detroit?
Yeah, I think it was a relatively close position battle. I mean, Aaron, if I remember right, contracted COVID at the start of camp, so maybe he came in just a slightly behind Jack. I think Jack had the edge for him, holding some of those things that maybe Aaron hadn't done in the past. And, they both had big legs. Jack didn't really, it was the first 4 games is when Jack just started rocking the ball. I remember there was no preseason last year, so I don't know that we quite knew what the Lions had. Those obviously are done with jugs machines, but I think, going back to last year, it was a pretty close punting battle in the preseason, and that's why they kept Aaron on practice squad to begin with as well. Look, as for Stafford, I've said it for a long time. I mean, Stafford is, he in Detroit, he was good enough to get 3 coaches fired, if that makes sense. He wasn't going to win anything in Detroit, certainly not by himself, but he's good enough that no one wants to move on from him, right? Because he's a good player. He's very talented, and some of the things he can do. I mean, we saw it in practice all the time. Back shoulder throw that he would make. His willingness to fit ball tight windows and throw to covered receivers. I mean, those are things that not a lot of quarterbacks can do. So I think you have to appreciate the talent. I do think he was, the Lions didn't win a playoff game in his 12 seasons here, so he was part of that. So to me, he's not, a top 3, 4, 5, whatever quarterback in the NFL, but I do think he's a very good, very talented player.
And he's got talent around him out in LA this year, and he should get that first or second or third playoff win. We'll have to see how it plays itself out. One other guy I wanted to ask you about was Penei Sewell. Last year, leading up to the draft, the Eagles actually were scheduled to pick right in front of the Lions. The Eagles were 6 and the Lions were 7. The Eagles traded down. Miami jumped up, took Waddle, which left Penei Sewell sitting there for the Lions at number 7, was a guy we talked a lot about. If this guy falls down the board, should the Eagles take him? They're good on the offensive line, but this kid is a special player. How special has he been? Has he shown improvement over the course of the year? I assume that he's going to be their left tackle for years to come, but give us a quick little scouting report on Penei Sewell and his development.
Yeah, no, he's been what people would have expected. Look, for people who don't know, he played right tackle all of training camp, and that's where the Lions had sort of ticketed in to play this season. Taylor Decker, who started the past 5 years at left tackle, was their guy. He hurt his finger right before the first game. Lions flipped Sewell midweek. He played left tackle in college, but he didn't play the 2020 season, and he's been a really good player. I mean, he had 2 blips where he gave up a pair of sacks against the Bengals and the Vikings. But other than that, I think he's been strong. Certainly given the Lions a lot to think about when and if Taylor Decker comes back. That Sewell looks like the future at left tackle, so maybe it's the veteran that they'll have to move to right tackle. I think you'll see, Sewell still has some times when he gets a little sloppy with his technique, just because he's used to dominating people athletically. But he's 21 years old. He's played 7 games in his career. He's going to be a really good player in time.
Dave, I don't know if you heard the flower talk from Nick Sirianni yesterday, comparing the Eagles to a flower, which did not go over well, as you can imagine, in this particular city. They prefer to have biting kneecaps. The interesting dichotomy in Detroit is Deuce Staley is obviously out there, and a lot of Eagles fans have a lot of love for Deuce Staley. He got to interview at least twice for the Eagles head coaching job. He's out as Dan's assistant head coach, and it seems like Dan really takes that job title seriously. Some people just have it as a title, and Dan Campbell seems to, from the outside, really put some added responsibilities on Deuce Staley. Hopefully that gets him headed in the right track for a head coaching job. Your early thoughts on Deuce Staley and how Dan is sort of mentoring him and trying to get him to that next step.
Yeah, it's tough for us to see exactly what Deuce is doing because so much of it is behind closed doors. But I do think you're right in that Dan sort of came up that assistant head coach route, right? He was never a play caller. He was never a coordinator. He went to New Orleans specifically to learn how to be a head coach, from Sean Payton, and to handle some of those things that, Sean gave him some responsibilities that just to take things off his plate. And Dan has done the same with Deuce. I mean, Deuce talks to us every week, as the assistant head coach. So he's got some media obligations. He puts out fires. I think that's the way that he phrases it sometimes, right before they get to the head coach. Yeah. So he's responsible for some of those small things, I guess, that, maybe you don't understand that come with the head coaching position until you're there. So you're right. Dan and Deuce have both looked at this as just, a spot to groom him to be a head coach one day.
Dave, if you don't mind me asking, who were you working for in 2008?
I was covering the Lions, actually. I was at the suburban chain of papers out here, the Oakland Press, that group, Macomb Daily. There's about 4 suburban papers. So I covered that season. It's my first full season.
The reason I asked for our fans here on Birds 365 who don't quite remember, Lion fans remember 2008 because it was 0-16. Eagle fans might not remember that, so that's why I wanted to point it out. Rob Marinelli, Dan Orlovsky started more games at quarterback than anybody. It wasn't a good team. It was as ugly as the record said that it was. Has anyone started to make the comparison yet? Is that a story in Detroit that been there, done that? It was only 13 years ago. Could we actually go without winning a game? Yeah, all right, I'm the bad guy. I'll play bad guy. That's okay. I'll make the comparison. Has anybody brought that up in Detroit?
It's funny, actually. I did a mailbag, answering emails and tweets and whatever a few days ago, and somebody had asked me that question, like, compare this team to the 2008 team. And I said, I like that question. I'm going to turn that into an actual story. And look, I think this team is better than that team. But this team is younger, right? Again, this team had so many rookies. I mean, they have 2 of their 3 cornerbacks are undrafted rookies that are starting, right? I mean, they're playing a lot of young guys in their defensive line rotation. They've got 2 rookies and they've got no receivers. I mean, there's pockets where they don't have talent, right? That team had Kelvin Johnson. That team had a veteran quarterback in John Kitna, who the Lions, I don't want to say constructed an injury, but Kitna could have played through the back injury. They put him on IR early here, and they sort of went young at that position, and that was part of their problems. Different expectations too. 2007 Lions, they went 7-9, and so they came into that season thinking like, wow, maybe we got a shot to make the playoffs here, and that was just an utter disaster. This is a complete different situation where we're at the very beginning of a rebuild. So I don't think, even though people have started to wonder if, well, are we going to go 0-17 and could this be in the cards? I think it's a completely different situation. That rebuild actually started in 2009. That's when they got the number 1 pick of the draft. They took Stafford, and then they went 12 years trying to win and never did.
Last one from me, Dave. I want to look at this team, and you say they're very young, and there's certain players people know. TJ Hawkinson's a real good tight end. Jody brought up DeAndre Swift locally. Has there been one player that caught your eyes? Penny Sewell, obviously a top-tier pick. Has there been one under the radar young player Eagles fans should be looking out for that maybe can do something in this game? Who's caught your eye for this young football team?
I think there's a couple guys defensively. I mean, the Lions just don't have those blue chip type players offensively outside of, Swift and Hawkinson, I guess, if you depending on how you view them. But defensively, they have some young guys that will flash. Julian Okwara, the last 2 games, I thought he's rushed really well. It's Romeo Okwara was the Lions' best defensive player. Got hurt a few weeks ago, out for the season. Julian is his younger brother. Didn't play last year as a rookie, really. And, he's created some havoc off the edge the last 2 weeks. And then in the secondary, I mentioned it, they're so young back there. Tracy Walker's a pretty good safety, but they're so young. And those 2 undrafted rookie cornerbacks have actually played pretty well. AJ Parker, their slot corner, is hurt. Not sure if he's going to play this week. Jerry Jacobs will make his 3rd start. And, for an undrafted guy, you can look at him and say, that guy's pretty good. I mean, he held his own against Jamar Chase. He got beat on 2 deep balls. One of them, he had no help over the top. The other, they sort of stumbled when they were hand fighting. But other than that, he did a really good job against Jamar Chase. So 2 young cornerbacks to keep an eye on.
Dave, can we get you to make a suggested pick on this game coming up on Sunday, or do you wait till Friday's paper to do it? Any chance? We won't tell anybody, we promise. You want to give us a leaning on the game between the Eagles and the Lions?
Yeah, no, I haven't put it down in paper yet, but I'm leaning towards picking the Lions. I mean, I think this is 2 pretty bad teams, frankly, and I don't have this great conviction, and it scares me that I think a lot of people will be picking the Lions this week, but I do think they've played hard for Dan. I think the Cincinnati game was an aberration. I think they really are that team that will scrap till the end and not come out low energy like they did against Cincy. And so I think just being back home, going into the bye, some of the things that they're starting to do defensively, again, they're not great on that side of the ball, but some of the young guys that are starting to flash, I think the Lions win this one, a close one, 23-17. I mean, somewhere in that area. The Lions haven't scored more than 19 points since week 1, so they're not the type of team that's going to take advantage of Philly's shortcomings defensively, but this game, maybe they crack that magic mark and go into the bye week with a win.
All right, Dave. So you got the kids to school safe and sound. You hopped on Birds 365 and you picked the Lions. Well, 2 out of 3 isn't bad. So we appreciate that greatly. Thank you much for coming on board. Enjoy the game on Sunday.
No problem. We'll see you guys.
Thanks, Birkett from the Detroit Free Press. Some good stuff there. He had to pick the Lions. I knew he was picking the Lions. I'm not picking the Lions.
I think he's right, though. A lot of people are going to pick the Lions this week.
More than half? You think the majority of the people, and I know
everybody's
got an opinion. We can ask who Mikey P has here on the stream. So I know there's
I'm talking about, more national guys, the guys who pick the games, each week. I think there's going to be a lot. I don't know if it's going to be half. It's tough to say half with an 0-17, but I think there's going to be more people picking an 0-17 that typically picks an 0-17.
You got a point there. Usually you don't get too many people jumping on the bandwagon of an 0-17. I am not. I'm jumping on the bandwagon of a 2-5 team with both feet, with confidence, no less. We'll continue to talk about the Lions and the Eagles here on Birds 365. We'll go an Eagle-centric guest in our second hour, but Johnny Mac and I will come right back to continue talking about Sunday's showdown here on Birds 365.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messon Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messon Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
The Mac and Mac guy, John McMullen, Johnny McMullen, doing on Birds 365 Sunday showdown between the Lions and the Eagles. Are you even allowed to call a matchup between a 2-5 team and an 0-17 a showdown? I guess so. I ain't gonna do anything.
Yeah, why not? It's a showdown.
And we thank Dave Birkett, who I had suggested to me as a guest. I had never had Dave on one of my shows before. Damn, he's good. You make a little notation. Very good. We got to have him on again if I need to get a Detroit Lions guy up here. He made a good point in that the Lions haven't scored 19 points since the first week of the season. Yes, they've hung in games. Yes, they haven't quit when they've fallen behind. They've played the entire 60 minutes hard, not well enough to get a win, but hard enough to get a win. I just looked at the latest line on the Eagles and the Lions. It opened with the Eagles as a 3.5-point favorite on the road. Not a great surprise here. In most outlets, it is still 3.5. In some, it has come down to 3. That is a key half point, if you ask me. And the over-under number opened at 49.5. It has come down to 48 across the board, except in a couple of spots, it's 47.5. Yeah, the more I think about it, even though I'm not happy with the Eagles' defense these days, and I did say earlier, I'm putting some faith in Jonathan Gannon at least tinkering with his defense, not massive changes, but a little tinkering of his defense. And Lions aren't a offensive juggernaut. Maybe the under is to play more so than the Eagles is to play this week. That this game right now has 20-17 written all over it.
Yeah, it does. You would think it would play into some of the struggles the Eagles are having. So Dave kind of leaned me more towards the Eagles by pointing that out. So the Lions are 28th in points per game. So down at the bottom of the league, 26th in third down offense, 25th in fourth down offense, 30th in red zone offense. So they're pretty consistently bad. The one outlier, they're middle of the pack in passing offense at 17. Probably, a check mark in Jared Goff's column because he can throw the football at least accurately if you give him a little bit of time. The problem is he's got nobody to throw it to. And the Eagles have been giving up 90% completion percentages, 80%, dink and dunking. So maybe it's, Hawkinson, it's Swift. They have to go about it. But there's nothing to hang your hat on with this Lions team. I mean, defensively, they're 31st in fourth down defense. They're 32nd, dead last in red zone defense. 25th in total defense. There's nothing to hang your hat on with this team. It's tough. That's why they're 0-7, I guess.
Right. It's just the fact that they don't get beat by 4 touchdowns. You would think a team that's that bad.
Although maybe the special teams, maybe Dave
Phipp's getting the job done. Well, last week they got 3 turnover possession.
They have the best punter in football. Where do you see Jack Box? He's unbelievable. But I mean, when your punter's your best player, that's not a good thing.
Yeah,
and Aaron Cephas has been that way for the Eagles a couple times, at least for a couple of games.
Let me ask you a question about Jonathan Gannon's use of players coming up for this Sunday's game. I was surprised Dave Phipp. He was being honest with us, but he said he thought that DeAndre Swift was a good pass catcher coming out of the University of Georgia. We have our boy Rick Saratel on this past year before the draft. We started Bird 365 before the draft. I pay close attention to the draft and the way that the players are perceived before they're actually taken off the board on draft day. I remember there being questions about DeAndre Swift and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I thought he was easily the number 1 draftable back. He ended up, I think he was the second back taken, and I know he was taken in the second round. I thought he was better than that. But I knew the reason why he slipped was because he wasn't great catching the ball out of the backfield. Last year for the Lions, he had 46 catches. He's already got 42 this year. We're at game 7. And he's almost surpassed how many catches he had last year. So I stand by my assertion that he is much improved in that area of it. Now, maybe they do a lot more. Maybe that he's the number 1 option coming out of backfield more often. Stafford could sling a little bit, so they didn't ask him to do it. 42 might have been an acceptable number for him last year. But he is a much bigger part of the offense this season coming out of the backfield. Leads the team in receptions by a goodly amount, as a matter of fact. How does Jonathan Gannon go about defensing that? What would his base defense, the way he plays defense, if the number 1 possibility for you to get beat is swing passes out of the backfield to a particular back? How do you shut that down, Johnny Mac?
Well, I think that's part of the problem with the Eagles defense. And we've been talking about the linebackers a lot, and he's been rotating linebackers. Look, I always say linebackers, I wrote about this for Sports Illustrated. linebacker in the NFL is not a rotational position. There are certain positions that are rotational. You try to find a 3-down linebacker, really 2. Occasionally you play dime, and you'll only have that 1 linebacker on the field, but you really want 2 guys to play the significant portion of the snaps. And Gannon's been using 5 really in different, and that tells you he doesn't have any confidence in any of them. So if you're looking for the pass coverage linebackers, and I use that term not facetiously, but the best of a bad lot is Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton. That's been sort of the way he's been going about it. It's TJ Edwards and Davion Taylor as the run stoppers, and again, I put all these in quotation, and Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton as the pass coverage linebackers, with Singleton the one guy who kind of toggles, and he does some of both. And then Gerard Avery is like that fifth guy who comes in when they want to use a varied front, and they really have more of a 5-man front look. And he's not even playing linebackers. So it's been a weird amalgamation. And the bottom line is he doesn't have guys. But if you're looking at the passing game, it's going to be Wilson and it's going to be Singleton. And, DeAndre Swift is probably pretty excited about that.
Would he actually throw an extra defensive back onto the field, knowing that
not a dime team right now?
Excuse me?
We're not a dime team right now.
Yeah, have they become a dime team? That's exactly the way I should ask the question. From 2 weeks ago when he said we're not a dime team, have they become a dime? Have they had the capability of becoming a dime team?
Well, they used dime on the biggest play of the game against Tampa Bay, which was that 3rd down conversion to Antonio Brown. Didn't work. More of a big nickel. If they go dime, it's big nickel, really, with a 3rd safety. And it was Marcus Epps. Problem with that is Anthony Harris is still injured. Didn't practice yesterday, so no idea if he's going to be ready for the game. And then if you start going deeper into it and say Kayvon Wallace is back, I don't. Would you rather have Kayvon Wallace on the field or Eric Wilson?
I'd rather see.
Pick your poison. Pick your poison.
Fair enough. I'll answer your question. I'd rather see Kayvon Wallace, but if he's not ready to go, continue to be the injured, I'd rather see Zach McPherson. Is he just completely buried that they have no confidence that they're willing to put him on the field during any defensive snaps?
Well, they haven't, pretty much, for the most part. He's a core special teamer at this stage. Now, it's tough to know because, corner's been one of the spots that they've been pretty good at. Darius is having a very good year. Steve Nelson's having a good year. As a second corner, Vontae Maddox is having a good year in the slot. So those guys never leave the field. So it's tough to figure out if they have no confidence in him or it's just that those guys are playing well and those guys are healthy and those guys aren't getting injured. It would be interesting to me. I don't hope injury, but if somebody got banged up for a series or two, I would like to see who they would put on the field. I assume it would be Zach McPherson, but remember they picked up a couple corners. Now, I wouldn't think Tay Gowan would be in the mix this early. They just acquired him. Mac McCain's been here for a while. It'd be interesting to me. Generally, he hasn't been active, though, so it's almost has to be Zach McPherson. And look, he was great early in training camp, and then when he started to play with the first and second team, it wasn't as great. So, he's a 4th-round corner. He's probably going to struggle if he's out there.
All right, you mentioned the fact that they could get some relief from the IR and guys could be back this week and potentially play. know that the flowering plant that is the Philadelphia Eagles grab more attention than
The roots are there, Jody. You can't see them,
can't
but
see
the
them.
roots are taking hold.
The Roots are a group that opens up Jimmy Fallon's show every night, not the Philadelphia Eagles. But has there been a
They're Eagles
Tyree?
fans, too.
Has there been a Tyree Jackson making a play in practice sighting yet? Because
No.
Howie Roseman
We
sure
don't get
did
to
talk
see
him
it.
up a ton when he traded Zach Ertz, and we're expecting at some point the return of Tyree. Are we getting any closer?
You're going to see the return of Tyree. Yeah, we're getting closer. They started his window, so they have 21 days, and he's going to be activated. And we're already into week 2, so he's going to be activated this week or next week, and you're going to get to see. Look, all we get to see is individual work, so we don't get to see any plays made in practice. But he made a lot of plays in practice and training camp, and that's the reason they're talking about him. And yeah, you're going to get. He's one of the players in the second half of the season. I think they want to get a good long look at as a potential that they haven't had really. Even if you think about Zach Ertz, as good as he was as a flex tight end. Still has the record for catches. He wasn't that explosive down the field threat. And they think Tyree Jackson has the athleticism to do that. They're very excited about the player. Now, I think people are skipping steps with Tyree Jackson. I mean, he just started playing the position.
And
I think
when you say people, are you referring to the general manager of the team?
Yes. Yes. Well, not only him, but yes. I mean, the way he talked about him, it's like, and then you're putting more pressure on the kid as well, because you're talking about him like he is Darren Waller, who we didn't get to see. And imagine if we got to see Darren Waller. You're completing 90% of your passes to Moreau, and, Darren Waller's not even out there. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's too much hype on the kid, and that's fine coming from outsiders, but insiders, I think it's a little bit strange.
Was a little surprising because we surely talked about him because you were impressed by him during camp, where you guys
can't help but not be impressed by the guy. I mean,
right, you're given as much access as you are during camp. Once season starts, come in for 10 minutes, watch a little individual workouts, get the hell out. We got to put our game plan in place. But in preseason, you got a chance to see plenty, and you got a chance to see enough of the young man to say, hey, keep an eye on this guy, Jody. He's going to make the team. He's got a chance to be a player. That was a while ago, but you were well within your right. Now that it has been under wraps for Howie Roseman to speak with him in such glowing terms, it's going to ratchet up the pressure on the player.
Hey, real quick, because I forgot to mention also when we were talking about Zach McPherson, he popped up on the injury report yesterday and didn't practice with a hamstring. So that complicates matters as well.
And oh, by the way, you mentioned Zach Ertz, not a downfield big play guy.
No, he wasn't.
Until he got to the Arizona Cardinals, and then he catches 45-yard touchdown passes. He had how many years here in Philadelphia? Couldn't get one over 35. So maybe it wasn't Zach. Maybe it was the Eagle offense that just didn't allow for him to make big plays like he did for Arizona this week. John, again, you guys have limited access, but I'm just asking to give me a vibe. Another day is clicked off the calendar. We're that much closer to the trade deadline, which comes up Tuesday after the game against the Lions. But you got a full 48 hours after the game to potentially do something. We all know the Eagles aren't adding. This isn't going to be a beat the Lions, hey, we're back in this kind of thing. If anything, they'll probably sell off and move a player for a draft capital somewhere thereabouts. We've been kicking around here for a couple of weeks as to what the Eagles could do, what the Eagles, in our opinion, should do. Anybody feeling the pressure in that locker room about the potential trade deadline?
You mean player-wise about
Yes.
being moved? I think there's certain guys that would like to be moved. Fletcher. I think there are certain guys who could be moved. Steve Nelson. especially if you lose a game in Detroit. But as far as pressure, I mean, Andre Dillard is, a potential to go, as we've talked about. If Derek Barnett's getting a third round pick, he's going. So there's the average, the obvious names, not average, the obvious names. I'm sure their agents have, given them a earful and said, that's a possibility. But I mean, it is the NFL. I always say the Eagles are not trading 4 players. I just named 4 players. They're not trading 4 players at the deadline. It doesn't work like that. Fletcher's not getting traded because of his contract. Derek Barnett's probably not getting traded for the same reason. So, you're down to, how desperate are some of these contenders to have a corner. If they're really, really desperate, they might overpay for a Steve Nelson. How desperate are these teams for a left tackle? If they're really, really desperate, they might overpay for Andre Dillard. And that's how if someone goes, it'll be, if the Eagles can leverage it. And Howie's really good at that. And you can criticize Howie for a lot of things, personnel evaluation being number one, which is very important. But what you can't criticize him for, he leverages trades well, very well.
Agree on all fronts there. And Steven Nelson could have played a little bit better against the Bucs, because when I think about a team that is all in for the Super Bowl and has issues at the cornerback position, the first team that comes to mind is Tampa. Shoot, even their new guys go down. They get Richard Sherman off the scrap heap. He plays a little bit. Oh, now he's on injured reserve too. So yeah, I could see Tampa having interest in a cornerback, except that they just saw Steven Nelson, and he's had a nice year. He's been a nice addition for the Eagles. He didn't play that well against Tampa, which is going to make them a little gun shy about picking off. But I hope that Howie can move at least one or more 2 guys. He waited on Zach Ertz and got a decent return for him. We're up against it now, so you're either going to do it, you're not going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it. You think we'll get something today? Think you'll be down there in Eagle Land and you'll get something will be pushed back? Delay, kind of like it was to get the Joe Flacco ducks in a row. Well, that'll be the first thing when you get that text that says today's scheduled meeting.
You never say never. I'll say this: you never say never with this team, and they might want to take the focus off the flower issue by creating another story. Don't think the Eagles are above that. By the way.
Hey, I wouldn't blame them if it happened to play that way. All right, one last thing. We're going to have our buddy Chris Franklin from NJ.com join us coming up less than 10 minutes from now. A lot of people are now expanding the conversation about the quarterback position with the Philadelphia Eagles. Joe Flacco no longer here. He was the number 2. Gardner Minshew, number 3, not activated. You guys hardly ever see him because individual workouts. Oh, he's not getting reps. That's going to be the starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Now that he's number 2, he comes more into the conversation. You don't think the Eagles have wavered on their commitment to Jalen Hurts as long as he's here, as long as we're not talking about the last couple of games of the season? You don't think that if Jalen Hurts goes out and stinks it up worse this week than maybe he has in some of the previous weeks, that we're actually having a conversation about?
Yeah. I've already said we're seeing Gardner Minshew at some point. We're seeing
but let me define, and I know it's basically impossible, but I'm asking you to speculate a little bit. What is at some point?
Well, I think if they lose to Detroit, it starts right there.
Really? You think you think there's a possibility Gardner Minshew is the Eagles starting quarterback?
There's a possibility. I think it starts to enter into that category of, okay, and I think part of it is, and I said, I wrote about this as well. I said Joe Flacco was more than the backup quarterback to the Eagles. He was also the buffer between. No one was going to call for Joe Flacco because of who Joe Flacco was. He's 36 years old. He's far closer to the finish line than the starting gun of his career. Obviously, no future in Joe Flacco. He was just a good backup quarterback that nobody noticed, nobody was going to call for, and as I said, was a buffer between Gardner Minshew, who's 25 years old and has started whatever it is, 20, 21 games, whatever it was, in Jacksonville, had some success statistically, and arguably can do more things as far as running a Nick Sirianni Indianapolis type offense that can bring in more things to it. And at some point, Nick Sirianni is going to want to say, I can do some more things. I can put more parts of this offense in if I got a quarterback who can handle it. So if it keeps going in a negative direction, the buffer is gone. So, we think about it this way, Jody. We talked about this a lot in the offseason when we talked about more league-wide stuff. And we talked about all these coaches, Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco and Matt Nagy in Chicago. And they're, no, we want to go with Jimmy Garoppolo. We want to go with Andy Dalton. I had to think about who they had in Chicago. And they drafted a quarterback at the top of the draft. There's such pressure when things are going poorly to get those guys on the field. And then all of a sudden, all right, we got to go with Fields. All right, we're going to, Lance is getting closer and closer, especially when you perform poorly. Now, it's not the same. Obviously, Gardner Minshew doesn't have that kind of cachet, but he's got more cachet than the starter. And when you keep losing, and you lose to an 0-7 team, and there's an alternative, who's the most popular guy in any NFL city when you're losing?
Backup
quarterback. And by the way, the personality on top of it, forget about it, man.
Yeah,
the Eagles started this.
That's kind of like Nick Sirianni. I don't really care about the personality.
Well, I don't care either, but it's part of it.
Small part. I'm picking the Eagles. I'm rooting for the Eagles. I'm going to make an official prediction here tomorrow that the Eagles are going to win the game. But part of me is hoping that Jalen Hurts throws 2 interceptions in his first 2 possessions, and Gardner Minshew comes in, and he throws 2 interceptions in his first 2 possessions, and the Eagles just get stone cold crushed, so that on Monday, the pressure to trade for Tua Tagovailoa is ratcheted up so much.
You're going. All right. Yeah, I see where you're going.
So that Howie Roseman, if it just happens to come down that the Watson guy gets traded to Miami and Tua becomes available, that the Eagles say, now is the time to jump. Now is the time to get aggressive. Take Jonathan Gannon at his word. Take the challenge, Howie Roseman. Get up in somebody's face and make a trade and get Tua Tagovailoa.
It's way too early, but I'm going to throw out my early prediction of the Eagles 2022 quarterback, and it's one of 2 names, Kenny Pickett or Gardner Minshew.
Are you excited by either of those 2?
No, not at all.
Yeah, neither am I. So I'm holding out hope I'm much more excited about the possibility of Tua Tagovailoa than either of the 2 guys that you just mentioned. Good choice.
And where we differ though is you throw a third name, I wouldn't be excited by that either. So if you want to throw the third name in there, I wouldn't be excited by that either.
I'd be more excited by Matt Corral than either of the 2 that you mentioned, but I would take Tua Tagovailoa over all of them. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac Birds 365 guys. We got Chris Franklin from NJ.com joining us next. So please stay with us.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of stateside vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messon Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messon Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Welcome back, guys. I'm Birch 365. Coming up on the Lions and the Eagles Summit. You got to win on Sunday. I'm leaning toward the Birds. McMullen non-committal. Good for him. We had Dave Birkett on from the Detroit Free Press. He's back in the home team. He thinks the Lions are going to get the first win of the year. That's only one of the questions we're going to put to our next guest. You know him. He's been here with us before. Does a great job covering the Birds for NJ.com. Our buddy Chris Franklin hops aboard. How are you, Chris?
Not bad, man. You know, I'm crazy right now because I look at the dashboard and it's like a 4. It feels like football weather. There's a 4 in front of the degrees, man. I'm freezing now, man. I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's way too cold. I hear you. What happened to having a week or two before you could go from the air conditioning to the heat? I'm not a fan of that.
That's right. Yeah, you got to transition a little bit. Now you can't do the shock go back and forth. My back can't take this anymore.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, tough question. I'm going to start you out with a tough one, Chris. If you were a flower, what type of flower would you be?
Well, I'm a rose because there's been times that if you ask some of my exes, I came through manure to come up and blossomed afterwards. So I think I'll go rose on that one.
All right, go with the top tier. I like it.
Nice.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, John and I debated this a little bit earlier. I was a little bit more put off by it than McMullen was because we compared it to the first press conference that Nick Sirianni ever gave, and I cut him a whole bunch of slack for that because he'd never done it before, and it was more nerves than anything else. He's not nervous anymore. He really believes this stuff, that a flower analogy is somehow going to inspire his group of 20-some-odd-year-old men to go out and win a football game on Sunday. I'm just not buying. Were you? Did you understand? Did you go, all right, maybe the direction I wouldn't go, but okay, coach, if you say so. I was actually put off by it. How about you?
I thought I got what he was trying to say. I don't know, just like a lot of things with this team, I don't know if the execution was there. I thought, like, I feel like it's a horticulture class, right? But I thought if he went more tree, that would make this like a sturdy, long lasting. It's been around for a while. I get what he was saying. I don't have an issue with it. I think it was. I think he should have had something a little bit more sturdy like that, because I get the messaging, and he's trying to be creative. He's trying to find ways to enlighten things and get this team to look like, hey, we're playing for the long game here instead of looking at the short term and like tune things out. I just don't know about the flower analogy when it came to that.
All right, one more joke, Chris. Who was between you and Mike K? Who was the fertilizer and who's the water? I think I know. Who
no! I'll say he's. I'll go this. I'll say he's the water because he's actually helped me out a lot. He's helped me grow.
I was going to go fertilizer for a different reason.
You're too good a guy. I would have thrown him under the fertilizer bus, but that's just me, Chris. All right, since McMullen's asking you really tough questions, I'll ask you one instead. Why didn't Deuce Staley get the head coaching job here in Philadelphia?
See, halfway through the season, I'm still trying to think of that myself. I thought he's a guy where he understood the city, what I think is a key thing. He's been around football as both a player and as a coach, so he knows how to connect with the guys. The players, if you ask any of his former running backs, they all love him. And I just don't understand. I know the Laurie explanation of, well, he has to go experience other things. I didn't buy. I thought if you have a guy who's a coach in wait, who has the characteristics that are necessary to be a good head coach, what I think he does, for the life of me, I don't know why. And it really, I think if he gets a chance, he's not your true X's and O's coach. He's not going to be your true scheme guy. But I think when you look at a guy when I look at a head coach, his main job is to inspire. His main job is to get a message across and to be a leader of men. When I looked at those three things, I thought that's what Deuce would have brought as the head coach of his team.
Yeah, there was so much counterintuitive going back about that coaching search from Jeffrey Lurie's messaging. We talk about messaging all the time. I mean, think of it. Doug Peterson wins a Super Bowl. He's here. He's entrenched. He's made the playoffs 3 times. You don't want to give him the autonomy to hire assistant coaches. You give a first-time head coach more autonomy, not complete, but more autonomy to hire assistant coaches. And your reasoning is, well, he's been in more places. Well, Doug was in one place with a successful coach. What do you want him to do? Bail to get fired so he can go to another place? Now Deuce is in Detroit with an 0-7 team. All right, he's getting more experience, but how does that? I didn't get the whole search, and now that we're in the guts of this, look forward, Chris. If they lose this game against an 0-7 team, how much does the pressure ramp up on this coaching staff? Did people start talking about one and done?
I think a lot more on the outside. I think you'll start to hear a lot more people go one and done. That's just looking at when. I'm just imagining with this organization the way it goes. I think I personally think no matter what happens, Sirianni stays. He comes back for another season, because it will look bad. I think it'll look badly on Howie Roseman, and it'll look badly on Jeffrey Lurie, that the guy that they thought, out of all those candidates that they were available, out of all the interviews they did, the person that they hired was basically flamed out after 1 year. And I still think, if anything, I think next year it'll set up a change when it comes to assistant coaches. I think you would see a more veteran guy. Like one guy I really was curious that wasn't brought onto the staff that kind of knows Nick and kind of knows and knows a lot of these other people was Mike McCoy. I thought he would have been a great hiring. We saw him out there at training camp, and he would give them that. I think this team, the one thing this team is really lacking is a veteran presence as a coach. Because I know Sirianni says he can reach out to Frank. Like yesterday, he said he can reach out to Frank Reich, reach out to all these other guys, but to have that coach in the meeting room, to have that coach in his ear saying, hey, you should challenge this, hey, you should accept a penalty or not, I think that's rough. I know Stoutland's on the staff. To me, he's helped with the run game coordinator before, but I think you just need that former head coach that can give the overarching idea of what it's like to be in that position. And this team doesn't have that on the staff right now.
If Nick Sirianni were to be a one and done, well, they'd actually have to hire someone to replace him. And I can think of one guy, Super Bowl winning coach by the name of Doug Peterson, who will be available at the end of this. Just putting it out there for those of you who want to wax poetic about Doug. But I digress. One thing that we know about Nick Sirianni is he can beat other first-year coaches. Took Arthur Smith to the woodshed week number 1 against the Falcons. Is he going to do the same to Dave Campbell this week?
I don't think he's going to take him to the woodshed. I think it's going to be real. I think it's going to be a lot closer than what people think. It's one of those things where Dan Campbell's got this team playing. It's tough because I think when you look at a team, if you're 0-7, or most teams, you have you're a player just sitting like, well, I know we're done, so I guess I'll start getting some tape on it for next year if somebody wants to pick me up, and I'll start looking forward to the offseason and go from there. And the one thing I think Campbell's got going is he's really got his players playing really, really hard, and that's what I think that's what you need when it comes to that. But it can get scary because they definitely want their first win. And if this game's tied going to the fourth quarter, I think it would more toward the Lions. But I think the Eagles win this game though.
Chris, the Eagles traded obviously Joe Flacco back up the Jersey Turnpike to the New York Jets, and you sort of have that buffer between Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew. It's gone now. Nobody was going to call for Joe Flacco, 36-year-old guy, 14-year veteran. There's no future in Joe Flacco. So I think from a personal standpoint, I think he was more than the backup. He was also keeping that controversy, whether it's perceived or not, away. Now you don't have that buffer. If Jalen Hurts continues to go in a negative direction, how quickly do the Eagles start thinking about, well, we got a guy who's got 20 starts under his belt. Let's put together some decent numbers. Maybe we can do a few more things offensively. How quickly would that start?
Personally, I think overall, I think it's like a 20% chance Minshew gets in there. And the reason why I say that is you look at the way the back end of the schedule. How much are you really going to learn about Minshew going against that easy part, the supposed part of that easy schedule? And I'll say that Hurts hasn't been as accurate as I thought he would be at this point of the season. I thought he'd see a little bit more progression in that aspect of the game. I think he still shows flashes at times of being a starting quarterback in this league. And I know he's going to 11. He's only had 11 games to basically be an NFL starter. If it's not, the only time I think you see Minshew comes in is if he turns the ball over for the next 2 or 3 games, he turns the ball over 3 or 4 times. He really, really regressed, continues to complete 52% of his passes, and the offense just looks completely disjointed. I think some of the reason why he's looked disjointed, I think some of the play calling is not helping him. I mean, when you throw at or near 60% of the time on first down, and you have a guy who's having accuracy issues at the moment, that doesn't put your offense in a very good position. And you start you set yourself up for second and long, third and longs, and you got to throw more. And that's what I want to see. I know they're not the biggest backs, but Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott, I want to see them get more involved to help out Hurts. But when it gets to Minshew again, I don't foresee him coming in unless he either.
Real quick follow-up, though, Chris.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn a lot about Gardner Minshew. Probably correct against the Jets and the Giants. And we talk about the bad teams on the back end of the schedule. Mm-hmm. Could you learn something about Nick Sirianni, though?
I don't think so. I don't think that's the case, too, because unless he has this whole other side of the offensive playbook that we're not seeing, I mean, we'll probably see try to do some RPOs with Minshew, and I think.
But don't you learn something from that, though? Don't you learn if he can't change with a different quarterback? Then you learn, or not, maybe from my perspective, then you learn, okay, this offensive coaching staff is that's not good. If you can't change and add some things with a different quarterback, learning can be, you learn something good, you learn something bad. You might be learning something bad, but I think you would learn something about the head coach if he can't add and sprinkle some things into the offense, or am I completely going down the wrong path?
See, I think it's more that I think even at the play calling itself, even with Hurts or Minshew, I don't think it's going to improve that much when it comes to there. I just, when I look at the way even if he had Gardner in there, and even if he can't develop that much too, and I mean, even with him, I don't even know that way. I think if anything, you would probably have to learn it by bringing somebody in next year when they have a full offseason. Because if you bring in him now, or if Reed Sinnett somehow gets in there and he starts lighting it up,
Reed Sinnett,
Oh, that way too. But I just don't see that much. I don't think we learned that much from Sirianni because I don't, especially when it comes to like the penalties, and some of the routes run or these guys run out. I just don't see it that much when it comes to like, I don't think you learned that much when it comes to Sirianni.
Here's the problem with the conversation we're having. You guys are talking too much about quarterback. The Eagles this weekend will be ground and pound. They started it on Sunday. It was going Miles Sanders' way. Then he got hurt. That's unfortunate. If I told you that Boston Scott was getting 15 carries this week, would you tell me I'm nuts?
Yeah, because it's not the Giants. Just kidding.
But where are the Giants? I was about to say, yes.
But I can see. I think this coaching staff really loves Kenny Gainwell, and they're going to give every chance they can to make sure that he gets gets to the ball as much as he can with Sanders out. I want to see what he does. He's not the biggest guy. I want to see what he does between the tackles because to me, it becomes kind of predictable when he's in there. They're going to run. It seems like they're going to run an outside zone. They're going to run a swing pass or try to get him involved somewhere in the passing game. I want to see him run right up the middle, right up the gut behind this offensive line because to me, it's almost like a Darren Sproles type thing. You get him behind that offensive line, especially that left side. If you get him behind Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata, try to find him. I want to see him do more of that one. But who knows? Maybe actually line up Jack Stoll or somebody as a fullback and actually use that one. That would be I think if that happens, I think there might be an earthquake in Detroit. But
yeah, ground and pound. I mean, it's just not going to happen with this franchise, this coaching staff. Hey, maybe if Deuce was the head coach, but Deuce is going to be on the other side of the football. Now, the guy who took Nick Sirianni did Jonathan Gannon. You could tell they're really, really good friends because he did him a great favor by taking all the heat off him by yesterday's press conference. But Jonathan Gannon was the coach taking the most heat coming off the Las Vegas game. Are we going to see any changes there against a Detroit team with no receivers? This is the first time all year, probably the last time all year, Chris, you're going to go into a game and say, well, the Eagles have better receivers than the Lions.
Yeah.
They cannot throw the football outside the numbers. Why do you have to play the safeties in Flint, Michigan? Why? Are we going to see more challenging as both Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon said?
I think this is the game you finally see Slay and Nelson play a little bit more press coverage because I think this is clamoring for it. It really is. And for life of me, I don't know why they don't do that. I mean, I think to me, when I look at Darius Slay, his best asset is being able to go look inside whoever their best team's receiver, just go, you know what? I'm taking you out. You're not going to catch the ball. And he's physical within that 5 yards, sometimes a little further downfield, but he's physical along and around the routes. And they haven't done that. And when your defensive line is having issues the way they are right now, trying to continually get to the quarterback, where you only have, of your 11 sacks, you have Javon Hargrave getting 6 of them. So you have issues getting to the quarterback. I think that's a way to slow down and help that pass rush because if you bring them up, you just throw the timing off of routes and you let your defensive line have a chance to get home. And I think you'll see a little bit more tweaks when it comes to. I think he'll let those guys play a little bit more because you don't have that threat. I wouldn't mind seeing an extra safety come, and with that, I wouldn't actually mind saying, hey, you know what? Stop going with the 2 deep. Bring a safety up a little bit more because the Lions are probably going to try to run the ball to get out that way. And lo and behold, you have an extra safety go help out in support, run support. So I think you'll see a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised to see Avonte Maddox try to blitz once or twice to try to mix things up and try to get this defense back on track. But they need to do something because it's been a rough 4 or 5 weeks for that unit.
Despite the fact that I'm rooting for ground and pound, and I don't have a lot of faith that that's the direction they're going to go for several reasons. Number one, as John pointed out, this is Jeff Florey's organization. We're talking about who wants to pass it on almost every single down. Number two, we had Dave Birkett from the Detroit Free Press on, and he did note that you talk about young, the secondary right now for the Lions, the 3 cornerbacks starting, slot, inside, outside, 2 undrafted free agents from this past year's draft, and a 5th-round draft pick are their starting cornerbacks as of right now. Is this the breakout week for the Eagles' young wide receiver core?
If they set up, it goes a little bit too. If they at least show the threat of run. I don't say they need to run 20, 25 times, but if they at least show run early on, they can be had when it comes to the play action pass game, because especially when the cornerbacks, when you're young, you're looking back more toward the backfield a little bit more, trying to see where everything is. You're more susceptible, especially with the speed that these guys have. There's a chance for the play action pass game to work really well. You saw when they got it set up early on what happened with Dallas earlier in that Vegas game. Dallas Goedert got some separation on there. You saw other things start to open up downfield. So I think this is a time where even if they show it for the first couple of drives, it'll at least give credence that they're actually willing to run the ball. And then that's when you start to do the play action. I think that's when you see, I think Devonta Smith and Quez Watkins will, and even maybe Jalen Reagor again as well too. You'll see them have a decent day.
The Lions have been in a lot of games, Chris. We talked about that with Dave as well. They lost to Justin Tucker on a 66-yard field goal that might have been a delay of game on top of it, or should have been. They lost to Minnesota, I think, on a 56-yard field goal, maybe. They had just converted a 2-point conversion. They've been in a lot of games. Are the Eagles going to need a 56-yarder from Jake Elliott to win this football game? Is it going to be close? Is it going to be a one-score game late in Detroit?
I think it's going to be a one-score game, but I think by then the Eagles will be playing up. I think they win by at least 6, but they're going to have to hope it's not on that right hash, because if he was on the right hash, Elliott's pushing it to the right and they're going to overtime. It's something about, I don't know, that area where you get that, but he's done better. I'll give Elliott this. He's done better than I thought he would, especially after last year where he had I'll say, I'm saying, cares. He had a horrendous year for his standards. He just missed a lot of easy kicks and extra points. And if it's from, I'll say this, if it's from 56 from the last hash, they're winning this game. If it's 56 that right hash where we're on,
if it's 56, I'm confident. If it's 40, if it's 39, I'm not as confident. And Jake Elliott's weird.
It's one of those things where he's like, hey, listen, you just keep them like earphones on, a blindfold on, kick them on the sideline. Hey, you're going out for 50 yards. Okay, time to go. Oh, wait, I got extra time.
Those extra point different distances can become a little dicey. John's right about that. All right, here's an optimistic point of view. Do you believe that Derek Barnett can actually get a tackle for a loss, or God forbid, a sack this week to make himself that much more tradable after the game on Sunday, Monday, before the Tuesday trade deadline? Because we had one media guy on CBS Sports suggest they could get a conditional third for him. John and I both laugh at that. I just want something for him. I'd like to see the Eagles flip him for whatever the hell they can get their hands on between now and the trade deadline. Will he make a play or two to add to his value so that if someone is contemplating, actually says, ooh, I got film on it. Yeah, let's give up that draft pick to get Derek Barnett for 9 games.
You can get Derek. I can see the thing with Derek Barnett. I can see this happening. Derek Barnett will get a sack, and then either he would be called because he was offsides, or he committed a roughing the passer or unsportsmanlike penalty. But when it comes to him, I can see it being. I wouldn't give, if I'm another. I'm shocked that somebody thinks he get a conditional third, because he has talent, but he's not consistent enough. If you even got a 5th round pick, just
plus you put the contract on top of it.
Yeah. I think the benefit would be you gain the contract space you can roll over for next year. That's the only reason why, really, because I don't see him resigning here. I just think you do better. I think you have a better shot at going into the draft and trying to get somebody else instead of bringing him back, because A, he has that penalty issue, and B, it's not consistent. And I'm tired of hearing about the bend. He has this physical attributes to do stuff, but he doesn't consistently show it. And you can't do it. If they get I'd be happy if they get a 4th or 5th round pick from him. I think they should jump on that, but I doubt that anybody's going to do that. And a conditional third. I mean, if somebody did do that,
that's right.
You celebrate.
But, all right, Tuesday is looming, though, Chris. If there is another Eagle, then we've already seen some movement to this point with Jack Ertz and Joe Flacco. Who's most likely to go? You have Barnett, you have Andre Dillard, you have more under the radar. I think Steve Nelson should be a guy who other teams should really be looking at, because he's cheap. He's playing at a pretty high level. most likely Eagle to go by Tuesday?
You have my guy Steve Nelson, and I'm putting two, and the one I'm putting behind him is just in case they know they can't sign him, and they're going to be they're very, very far apart for contract extensions. I think you have to think about Vontae Maddox as well too. Both are free agents for next year. You've started stockpiling all these cornerbacks: Tay McGowan, Mac McCain, and you have all this. You have Zach McPherson still back there as well too. You stockpiled all these young cornerbacks.
Josiah Scott.
Josiah Scott, yeah. You forgot about him because I think.
Why wouldn't you?
So you have all this young cornerback talent. You want to see what you have before you go into next year's draft. And so I think a guy like Steve Nelson, a guy who's a veteran, who's played in both zone heavy and man-to-man heavy defenses, you can never do without too many good cornerbacks, especially the way the passing league. Because if I'm a team that's on pace to potentially play a team like the Cardinals, who have all those receivers, including now Zach Ertz, you're going to need all the best secondary guys you can get. So I see one of those corners potentially go. I think Vontae Maddox are going to try to work out. I don't think they're far apart, but I wouldn't be surprised if it said if Vontae's agent goes, I want 4 years and some $60 million. Like, well, I'm not saying say that, but we're not paying that. Okay, yeah, that way too.
They work out things with Dallas. They'll work out things with Avante.
Oh yeah,
or vice versa.
It's like Tobias Harris and Boban. You can't. They're like a separate way. You can't separate them because we do like that's weird.
Yeah,
seeing that.
John keeps saying this. They'll work things out with Dallas. They'll work things out with. They haven't worked things out with Dallas. And I think he's getting more and more expensive. He actually had a nice game last week when Zach Ertz wasn't around to suck up some of his potential catches. How expensive is Dallas going to get?
It's for I think he's going to get like even if they around the average around franchise tag number worthy. I think he's going to get that much because when you have a tight end who's able to not only run the routes, who can run after the catch, and lo and behold, I think this gets lost now, especially when it comes to tight end play, but can block at a really good block really well too. When you have a guy that can contribute in that many facets of the offense, it's going to be pretty expensive. And I think the Eagles knew that. So that's why I think they're still really trying to save a lot of money to make sure and get set for that. I mean, I know the cap's going to go up again next year, and they'll actually have Wentz's number coming out the books, and they'll roll over this money that they have this year. I want to say, like last I checked, and it's been a while, it was like 16, 17 million. They'll roll that over. So I think they know what they have. I think they're really trying to get that, but Dallas Goedert's going to cost. Yeah. It's going to cost a lot.
Hey, Howie Roseman said it. There will be no discounts on Dallas Goedert. It's going to be north of the franchise tag number. But Jody, they could put the franchise tag on him. He's not going anywhere, so don't worry about that. Chris Franklin, thrilled to have you. You see the Twitter handle at Chris Franklin News right there. Read them at nj.com. I got that right. Tell Mike K I got that right.
That's always great. If you go there, it redirects you to something really weird health thing. I don't know why New Jersey Tech does. I don't know. They buy it.
and let it be on the record that both myself and John McMullen were ready to go with you as water and Michael K as fertilizer. But you made yourself fertilizer, Franklin, so that's on you. We got clean hands on this. We don't have to dig into the Nick Sirianni ground. You put yourself in there, buddy.
Some of my selections have been the other word for manure. So, yeah, that's about it. That's why I'll take it.
Chris, great stuff. We appreciate you coming on. You know we're going to tap into you again. Go help get the Eagles win.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Always fun talking to you guys.
Thanks,
Chris Franklin from NJ.com here with us, the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. All right, we've got a solid 10 minutes left. We're not going to officially go on the record and make a pick in the Eagles-Lions game. We'll save that for tomorrow's version of Birds 365. Oh, but you already know I'm picking the Eagles. The question is by how many? We'll come back, give you a couple more parting thoughts on this edition of Birds 365.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Mess & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Mess & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope. John Doherty, business manager of Local 98, says it this way: the best way not to forget where you come from is to never leave.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you. Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Mega Mac guys here with you on Birds 365. We'll put them all on the show. Final couple of minutes here on this Thursday edition. J-Mac, we started Birds 365 back in April.
How many shows?
Today would be show number 144. 144.
All right.
Not a bad
always ready. I'm always impressed by that.
You got it. Prior to, how often did you make appearances on the middle here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel?
A lot. At least once a week, often twice a week. I've been on it a while. Those guys are down on me. But I'm usually not. I'm not home.
All right. Are they down on you, or are you just less available?
I'm less available. It's a little from column A and column B.
Okay, fair enough.
And I want to go to
column C. For our guys on the middle who are coming up just over an hour from now, we are on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. I did read our buddy Eitan's latest column on Philly Voice, and he is suggesting that the Eagles at 2-5 are 2-5 because they want to be 2-5. That this is pre-planned. That this is a tank job by the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, we here in Philadelphia know what tanking looks like. We saw tanking firsthand. We saw the process with the Philadelphia 76ers. And that to me was quite obvious. Oh, yes, we're not only not attempting to win games, we're working hard to lose games so that our draft status escalates. You don't think Eitan really believes that, do you?
I hope
not. Hot take to get attention. He doesn't really believe they're actually trying to lose games. I know Jeff Lurie said this is a transitional year, and they look like a transitional team to me, but there's a difference between transitional and flat-out tanking, at least in my dictionary. You don't think the Eagles are tanking, do you?
No. I think people get caught up in the moment. It's like you said, when we started this show in the off season, and we had more time to talk about the league and bigger picture issues. And we said we thought the Eagles had a chance. We both kind of said we thought the Eagles had a chance to be better than people thought because of the offensive line and defensive line. I think we both had them at 8 wins. I think we both started at 2-5, to tell you the truth.
Yep.
That it was the schedule. It was this portion of the schedule. They were going to have a real difficult time beating the teams they lost to. I think you actually, I had them losing in Atlanta. You had them winning in Atlanta. I forget. I think I had them beating San Francisco early on. And that's where the disconnect was. We had them, I think we both had them beating Carolina and losing to everybody else to this point, which is how it has shaken out. So what's changed? Well, the only thing that's changed is it's looked pretty ugly. The style points, we talked about it from a Detroit perspective. They're close, but they don't win games. Well, the Eagles have been getting blown out in garbage time, yardage, and it hasn't looked pretty. It hasn't looked like that rose that Nick Sirianni wants to grow. It's looked more like the fertilizer that you need to get that rose to grow. It's looked like shit. And that is what has changed. They're not trying to look like that. They look like that. And I have more concerns now, but most of them, bottom line, Jody, look, Brandon Graham got hurt. They have missed Brandon Graham. And on the offensive line, they had all the issues. Lane Johnson aside, the personal issues. You get Brandon Brooks hurt again. You get all the movement, all the shuffling. Isaac Seumalo's out for the year. Injuries are part of the game, but we always said, barring injury, they have a chance because of the offensive line and defensive line. Well, guess what? They got hit with injuries to key players on the offensive and defensive line. So maybe it doesn't look as good as it could have been, but no, they're not tanking. My long-winded answer.
Here's where it's gonna skew for me from what I thought at the beginning of the year through practices, through preseason games. I really did think the defense would be better, and surely subtracting Brandon Graham from the equation has had a major negative influence on that. But I still thought they'd be better defensively than they have been. And yeah, I point more of an accusing finger at Jonathan Gannon than anything else. But we'll see if they pick it up this week. This is a week that they can pick it up because the opposition just is not that good. They're not a good offensive team.
By the way, real quick, I want to get this in because I should have said this earlier. I saw Brandon yesterday, Brandon Graham. It's going to be off the rollouts soon, like within a couple days. And he's expecting to be back in June, ready to be 100% medically cleared by June. And I joked, I said, man, they miss you. And anybody who's ever met Brandon's got a big personality. And he just laughed and he said, that bought me another year.
Sad but true. Brandon's nobody's fool either. He comprehends the way the National Football League works. But you saw it just happened to run into Brandon Graham. We know he's not playing. He's done for the year. They had not said that Brooks was done for the year.
He's supposed to be back, but that was a pretty significant injury. It was going to be 2 months at least. So, but they expect him to be back at some point, but still no clear timetable on that. But yeah, it's going to be a significant portion of the season. So, but they expect him to be back at some point. It's not a season-ending injury,
and that would be nice because the Eagles. And from time to time that a guy go on IR, come back. We're hoping for a Tyree Jackson development here in the next week or two. It would be nice to get a big name guy back like Brandon Brooks. Could help him to get to the 8 wins. I'm still not giving up on 8 wins, Johnny Mac. We said 8 wins. I still think it's an outside possibility. I've not moved off that yet.
Hey, you start the schedule with 0-7 this week. I mean, yeah, you got to find a way to win that game, Jody.
Yeah, they lose on Sunday. I'll officially throw 8 wins over my shoulder. All right, buddy boy, you ready to be back here in 22 hours?
I am not quite ready, but I will be here.
When are you taking off for Detroit?
Saturday afternoon, 1:30-ish.
All right.
On a crop duster, I believe. Small plane. Always cross your fingers.
He's got to explain to his wife why he has to go, because it's kind of his job. Football does play on Sundays, and John's going to be busy covering the Eagles and the Lions, but not before he joins us back here on Birds 365, 22 hours from now. Have a great Thursday. Be here for Football Friday, guys.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple,